this video, we will cover everything you need to know about pivot tables in just 10 minutes. We will start with the basic of data analysis using pivot tables, then explore pivot table visuals such as slicers, timelines, and charts. Finally, we will dive deep into advanced pivot table features like grouping, calculated fields, and more. So let's get started with the video. Here's the Excel file we are working with today, which you can download from the video description for free. As you can see, we are selling product, and from this data, we would like to determine our total revenue, identify the best selling products, and uncover other insight to help us make informed decisions. To do this analysis, first we will turn it into a table just by hitting Ctrl T and hitting OK, as that's typically best practice. From here, we are gonna turn it into a pivot table. So we are gonna go under the insert tab and then just click on pivot table. This pop-up should show up. It basically says to put it into a new worksheet. We are okay with that and we will hit OK. From here, we will find all of the pivot table fields on one side. This area contains all the column header we had before in our table, which are now available here. So that is where we will conduct our analysis. If you want different viewpoints, you can click on this icon and switch to a vertical view or revert to the original layout by clicking this icon again. You can also drag this panel wherever you prefer, but for now I leave it here on the side. For example, if we wanted to find the revenue for each product, we would select the revenues, which would be our values, meaning that's what we are summing. As you can see, the table will start to auto-populate. This gives us the total revenue, but we want to break it down by products. So we will place the products under the rows. As you can see, this will start displaying the revenue for each product. Let's suppose that we want to change the format of this because it's kind of hard to read this many numbers. We can just go to right click under number format, and then we are just going to change this to say a number and use the comma separator just so it's easier for us to read, and remove the decimals and hit OK. Now it's very easy to read. Similar to the rows, we have the columns. For example, we could add the country as a second variable, and now you can see what that looks like. If you ever want to remove one, it's as simple as dragging it out. Now, what if I want this table to be ordered from highest to lowest? For this, just right click, go to sort, and choose to sort from largest to smallest to make it easier to read. Similarly, what if we want the proportions, so the percentage of the total? We can also right click for that and go to show value as, and here you are going to have a ton of different options. For us, it's a percentage of grand total, and it's done. What if we also want to find out which product is selling at the highest price? Essentially, the average sale price per product. For this, we won't need the revenues anymore, so we will remove that from the values. Instead, we will add the price per unit under values. Initially, this will give us the sum, which isn't very useful. To change this, right click on it, go to summarize values by, and select average instead of sum. Now we can easily see which product has the highest average price. Okay, now moving on to part 2, which is visuals. Let's suppose we want to see the product sales by date. To do this, we go back to the pivot table and remove the average under values. So that's not what we want here. Instead, we will add the revenues. Additionally, we will put the dates under the columns. This is one way to do it, but as you can see, it's not very easy to interrupt or read. So we will remove the date again as well. One thing we can do here is put the date under filters. To do this, we will drag the date field over to the filter section. This will allow us to filter specifically by date. For example, if we select the 1st of January and hit OK, the table will filter accordingly. While this method works perfectly, it's still not ideal in my opinion. So we will move away from this approach. Instead, we will go under Pivot Table Analyze and insert a timeline. We will select dates for the timeline and hit OK. Let me rearrange that a bit. This timeline will enable us to select specific time periods, such as a particular month. Additionally, we can change the view from months to quarters, allowing us to select which quarter we want to analyze. This makes it easier to interact with and interpret the data. On the topic of filtering, another excellent tool is Slicer. For example, let's say we want to add another variable such as the country. We could add it as a column, but instead we can go to pivot table analyze and insert a slicer for the country. We will hit OK. This slicer provides another way to filter, this time by the country. You can see how it works. When I select a country, everything updates accordingly. You can also select multiple countries by clicking the multi-section icon, and you can select all countries by hitting the select all button. One final part of pivot table visual involves charts. First, let's remove both of these slicer by hitting delete. We will delete the previous one as well. From here, go to pivot table analyze and click on pivot chart. Hit OK to insert the chart. What's great about this chart is it's dynamic. It updates based on whatever we add to the pivot table. For example, if we want to include the original breakdown, we can place it under the legend. You will see how the chart updates dynamically. Similarly, we can apply filters, like removing the country and hitting OK. You will notice that everything updates dynamically to reflect these changes. Alright, now moving on to the step 3, which is advanced pivot table feature. Here you can see we have a clean pivot table. Let's suppose we want to determine the profit by product. However, if you look at our data, you will notice there is no profit field. We will need to create one using calculated fields. To do this, we will go to pivot table analyze, then under the fields, items and sets drop down, we will click on calculated field. We will name it profit, and the formula will simply be our revenue minus our expenses. We will double click on revenue, then type a minus sign and double click on expenses. After that, we will click add and then OK. Now you can see that we have got the sum of profit. Let's suppose that we want a breakdown by product. You can see what that looks like there. If you ever have some doubts about a specific number, like maybe the Apple profit here doesn't seem right to you, you can always double click on it and you are gonna see exactly where it's arriving the whole data from in a new worksheet. From here, let's suppose we want to analyze the profit by date instead of product. We will drag the date field over to the rows area. By default, it may show the breakdown by month, but if we prefer to see it by quarter, we can use the grouping feature. To do this, we will right click on any of date, select group, and then choose the grouping options we want. In this case, we will select quarters and months, deselecting the daily breakdown option. After hitting OK, the pivot table will now show the data grouped by quarters. If needed, we can easily expand or collapse the table by right clicking and selecting expand or collapse. For now, let's collapse the table to get a cleaner view. Now let's see what happens when we add new data to the original sheet. We will navigate to the bottom of the data by pressing Ctrl page down and then Ctrl down arrow. Once we are at the bottom, we will copy the entire last row by pressing Ctrl Shift right arrow and then Ctrl C. We will paste it below by pressing Ctrl V. Next, let's change the product name in this new row to a newly launched product. Let's call it Orange and hit enter. Now we want to see if this new data is reflected in our pivot table. To do this, we will go back to the pivot table and check if orange is showing up. If it isn't, it's likely because we need to refresh the data. Let's go ahead and remove the dates and just focus on the products. We are going to select the products and drag them across. However, you may notice that the new product orange is not showing up. This is because we have not refreshed the data yet. To fix this, we will go to pivot table analyze and click on refresh. Now you will see that orange is displayed in the pivot table. This shows the importance of refreshing the pivot table whenever you add new data to ensure everything is up to date. What we have covered so far is the conventional approach to working with pivot tables. But there's another tool that many people are not aware of. So let me show you that. If you look to the right side under the Home tab, you will find the Analyze Data button. Click on that and you will see it allow you to interrupt your data using AI. You can see that over here it has discovered some insights like for example the expenses by country and sales method, and there is a ton of other information. Now if you don't find it very useful, you can still ask it questions much like a human. Or another example of this like ChatGPT, as you ask questions there and we can ask it to find the revenue for Apple. Let me write here revenue for Apple and hit enter. You can see that it has exactly found the revenue for product Apple. Overall, it's a pretty powerful tool, so feel free to play around with it for yourself. And I have also created a full tutorial on how to use this tool. Check the video description to watch the full tutorial. Hit the like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in my next video.